Welcome to CramerSez. CramerSez. Be part of the show at CramerSez.com. Interact on Twitter at CramerSez. Now, Kramer Says.
Welcome to the show. My name is Kramer. This is the CramerSez podcast. It is Thursday, February 23rd. We are live. Let's get right into it, shall we? Today, our guest is a return guest. We talked to her last month. But today, we're talking again to 2A Patriot Mama who went to Vegas for the Big Search. If you're not familiar with what the Big Search is, it happens at the Super Bowl every year, and they are searching for and rescuing trafficked and exploited children. In the last effort, 15 kids were saved and pulled up from the street. Here's a news story that explains the whole situation. Take a look at this, and we'll be right back with Patriot Mama.
That is hard to even think about. According to Nevada child seekers, 20 kids go missing every day in our state. That's over 7,000 a year. And while most are found within a few days, hundreds more are not. And that's where the Big Search comes in. News 3's Denise Roche is live in downtown Las Vegas with the push to bring more missing kids home.
Yeah, Jim, this is an annual 3-day search that usually coincides with the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, that is a time when human traffickers are busy in tourist areas and our missing teens are at their most vulnerable.
It is way worse than what people think.
Pages and pages of innocent sons and daughters. This is who volunteers with Nevada Child Seekers are fighting for.
I want you to text this tip line because what we do is in real time we send it to the detective.
This weekend, the Big Search is once again underway in Las Vegas.
Go, let's do this.
A massive effort to find missing kids lost to the streets.
We do this intentionally leading up to Super Bowl. We like to do these events surrounding male-dominated events because sadly that brings a lot of people into town that maybe have some ulterior motives, and our children, we don't want them to be exploited.
It's going on in your own backyards.
Sonia Marquetta has been advocating for child sex trafficking victims for 8 years. Today, part of a team assigned to the Las Vegas Strip.
So far we got, just on this card alone, tips on her and tips on her.
Talking to casino workers, cab drivers, and security guards, passing out flyers and asking questions. Turns out some of their best information,
I know her.
comes from the Strip's homeless population.
Her I met with a boyfriend.
I want to call this in because you seem to have the most information out of everybody that we have come across.
The Big Search is now in its 15th year, started by the nonprofit Free International.
Kids need to be found, right?
Spokesman Michael Bartell.
We wrap services around the families and those situations that need help, because you need the so what on the backside, right? You go find them. Sometimes that can just be a box checked off. We don't want to do that. We want to be very present in families' lives to offer them the help they need.
During last year's search, volunteers were looking for 30 missing kids. They found 44. And already this year, success, as names are slowly removed from the list one by one, including that of a 12-year-old.
Sometimes kids will see themselves in these flyers and say, hey, I'm tired of being on the streets, I want to come home.
But not all of them.
Have you seen any of these kids?
In front of Caesar's Palace, Marquetta suspects a young man wrapped in a Christmas blanket might be one of the missing, a 17-year-old boy who disappeared in September. But volunteers have strict instructions: do not frighten a child into running. In fact, even after their brief conversation, the teen immediately moves to a new spot.
Well, what happens now is we called it in, the tip. They just got back to me. We sent the pictures over, and they are notifying a team, and I gave the location, and they will come out and do their job.
Because unfortunately, you can't do anything else.
I can't do anything else.
Except continue looking.
Is there any way we could leave these with you and you happen to see any of them? There's a number you could call on any tips whatsoever.
Until every child is safe.
They're either running away from something, they're running to something.
And their issue, whatever it may be, can be addressed.
They could be being hurt, they could be exploited, they could be in danger, and we need to be their voice and get them home and get them help.
Now, as for that young man in the Christmas blanket, still no confirmation that he is one of the missing, but I'm told caseworkers are on it. Now for a little good news. During the very first day of this search, 12 kids were found, and volunteers will be out through Saturday night looking for more. Reporting live in downtown Las Vegas, I'm Denise Roche, News 3.
We wish them a
Wow, wow, wow. What an interesting story and heartbreaking to see that many kids on the streets. Again, our guest today is 2A Patriot Mama. You know her from TikTok and Instagram. Welcome to the show, Patriot Mama. What is up?
Hello.
Good to
Thank you
see you.
for having me back. Good to see you too.
Well, I wanted to get you back because after you were on last time, we talked about what you were going to do and what you hope to achieve. And it's interesting to see that you were able to get 15 kids off of the streets over the time that you were there for the Super Bowl weekend. Let's walk through the process. For some people that don't know who you are and what you do, kind of explain how you got into working with kids and why specifically you went for the missing, exploited, and trafficked.
Like I've said before, I've started spreading awareness for human trafficking, child trafficking about 8 years ago. And down the course of my path of research and everything, I learned more and more. I also aligned myself with the proper people to educate me more, that are physically involved with this, whether it's legislation with politicians that I speak to, and organizations. I've gone through many organizations. I do have contacts with many, but as I learned more about what really was going on, I did come in contact with that very new organization, Change Unchained, who is now a year old. Um, Become very close with the founders to learn more, and their transparency was very refreshing for me. Especially when you're donating money, I want to make sure
Right.
everybody knows where your money's going because you never hear. But to be able to have that contact with them and see exactly where it's going. Like surveillance equipment was purchased with some of my donations, clothing for one of the victims that they rescued and was being taken care of on their aftercare ranch with their newborn, knowing that they were able to walk away after their stay with brand
Right.
new clothes. It paid for the pediatrician appointments. Like it was very refreshing, and I fully support them, and they're doing amazing things, and they have a lot of new things coming down the line which we'll speak about, which I'm very excited about. But to be able to have that opportunity when I learned about volunteer options across the country, and when they set these up, I immediately jumped on it. I wanted to be there. I wanted to see. I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't want to just be this person behind a social media screen spreading the awareness. As important as it is, I wanted more. I wanted to do more. I wanted to get off my ass and do more. And I was able to. And this was life changing to be a part of this and see how they do this and be a part of actually children being rescued.
Well, you've been doing this for a while. When you got to Vegas and started doing the work, feet on the ground, how eye-opening was it for you in this first time that you've done this to see your actions, what you've been doing in New Jersey, what you've been doing on TikTok, what you've been doing on Instagram, now come to fruition to where you're actually locating missing children? How eye-opening was it to you, and how many new things did you learn that you didn't know?
It was very eye-opening. Our first day there, they set up a volunteer center, and you meet, you have your orientation, you get you pick your teams and you pick your locations, and then you just go out. So we chose the strip, and immediately we didn't know exactly what to expect until we were literally out there. And we just started asking questions. We started using our brains, like, who would have information on these kids? Who would see them? We started knocking on taxi cab windows as they were lined up at hotels. We were getting tips. Yeah, I've seen, like, these are what the cards look like, just so you know. So this is what basically we got.
Okay.
They have two sides. So we got four of them. There were 31 or 33 cases. And we were getting tips immediately from the first person that we came in contact with. And all the way down the strip to the point where there was a lot of, and we were taking notes. We got a lot of information from homeless people. We made a point to go to the back garage valets instead of the front ones that were out in the open, because we figured, all I kept saying was, and I was trying to put myself, if I was a trafficker bringing, a victim to a hotel, I'm not going to bring them to the front door. I'm going to go to
Right.
the back valet where they're not seen,
Right.
especially if this is obviously a documented missing child. So, and that's where we were getting a lot of our tips. And a lot of these people that were giving us the tips were saying one specific location, and we kind of all looked at each other like, something's not right here. Something's not right. My intuition was saying something's going on at this hotel. So I said, "Where is this hotel?" It was maybe 2 hotels down. I said, "Let's go. Let's go." I went straight there. I went to
Yeah.
back to LA. We went down into the garage and we started getting more information. And I said, and on a lot of, of the children on the cards and with details and stuff. So we wrote everything down. Um, that first day, I had the news crew with me. They put the news crew with me because they felt that because I knew the organization and I had been doing this for so long, they figured it'd be best to let the news crew tag along with us, and that's how they got the story. But we get back to the volunteer center and we gave all the intel in, and they took everything down. And what they do is now they pass it off to the detectives, the rescue operation. I also, because I know I had clearance to go into the task force house. So the second part of my day, I drove over to the task force house where, you know, they were all doing the work so I can be better educated on how this stuff works and I can share that with everybody else. So, yeah, this is what the task they basically rent Airbnbs, and all of them fly in from all over the country, and they work together with local law enforcement, local anti-human trafficking, local NGOs. Nevada Child Seekers is part of this. Call to Rescue is the organization that actually created the big search. And they're the ones. So when we got to Vegas, specifically in Vegas, they worked with Free International, who is based out of Vegas. They work with Nevada Child Seekers. So when they move to another state, they'll be working with other organizations from those states. But here, I got to go in, and this is basically what it looks like. They have each individual case with the and as they're getting the intel, they're writing it up, they're comparing notes, they're researching everything. So when I had gotten there, I had already given the intel to Nevada Child Seekers, and then when I was mentioning some stuff, they all looked at me and they're like, "Well, are you gonna give us the intel now?" And I said, "Oh, I thought they gave." They're like, "We don't, we're not gonna give it to us." So I sat there and I basically got all of the information. I even had one of the woman in the video, the homeless woman, got her cell phone number. I said, "Do you mind if I take your cell phone number if they have any other further questions, besides
No,
that?"
right.
So I gave them everything. And they all kind of looked at each other and I said, "You guys all have the same thought that I have, don't I? Don't you?" And they're like, "Well," and it was I said, "You guys know nothing about this location?" And I could say it because it's been said. It's the Cosmopolitan. And they're like, "No, we didn't know anything about that." And they now have been working all of these cases since January, and they were there a week prior to the actual volunteer part. And none of them knew about this location.
Wow.
So, I gave them everything, and I stayed there for the meeting. I watched them how they gather intel, how they create, in the computer, and how they work this out and decide how they're gonna go in and pull a child. I mean, there's no door kicking, there's no
Right.
helicopters and
Right.
propelling. This is just, I mean, like literally sweatshirt hoodies. Yes, okay, I watched them strap up in bulletproof vests, but that's for protection just in case there is, if the case
Well,
actually
yeah. I
comes
mean, there was
to
a
that.
there was a reporter yesterday shot and killed at a news site. I don't know if you saw that yesterday.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, a news site. There'd been a
My head
homicide.
is so buried in this stuff that I don't even know what's going on in the world. It
Yeah,
could be
yeah. There was a
literally now right now.
there was a homicide, a shooting. News crew shows up, and the killer shows back up at the crime scene, and then goes and kills the reporter. Bizarre. So yeah, you can't be too protected.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: how responsive when you were going, from the taxi cab drivers to the doorman and so on? How responsive were they to you and your questions? Did they see what you were doing and then
Yes.
jump in and they were very?
So I had a badge
Mhm.
as a Nevada Child Seeker volunteer. I basically announced who we were. We had the stack of cards. The first day, I will say, everybody was amazing on the street. They seemed very hard. They know that there's a big problem in Vegas.
Right.
They seemed, everybody was very forthcoming. They were giving us the information. However, what I will say is the second day, not so much.
Really?
And we were followed by two gentlemen at two separate and very obvious, like following us when we were going in locations. They would stop outside. We actually had to lose them twice.
You stepped on somebody's toes.
We felt the word was out what we were doing, because one of the valet guys that we had went to, now we went to a separate location now the second day, because you don't want to hit the same spot. You got your information. Let's hit another spot. Said, oh yeah, I saw you guys on the news. Now it wasn't us specifically, but they did announce it on the local news that big search was there.
Right.
So now what they do, and I asked Nevada Child, the woman Margarita who runs Nevada Child Seekers, when I got back, we had to give the description of the men. And this has happened before, where they actually tried to come out and intimidate the volunteers, because you're messing with their
Right.
Yeah. So, they don't want that. Actually, they used to do it at nighttime as well. And she had to stop that because there was a group of women that went out doing what we did, the canvassing. And a gentleman decided to break through the group and grab one of the women by the arm. And thankfully, she started screaming and people heard and saw, and he ran off.
Wow.
But this is what they do. They try to scare the volunteers so you're not getting the information and you're not bringing it back for them to find them. So it was a little more intimidating the next day, and a lot of people did not want to give up information. We got
what about what about the 12-year-old? How heartbreaking was it to find a 12-year-old living on the streets?
I don't know the details behind it, but there was two 12-year-olds, a boy and a girl. I don't know the details of what their situations were. I don't know if they were being trafficked, because they're still working cases, and I haven't been able to hear. And it's not really something that can be broadcast, because they do protect, obviously, all of the information. But think about it: a 12-year-old.
Yeah. I cannot imagine. I was homeless at 16, lived in my car at 16, and I had at least had a car. I cannot imagine. And I was a big 16-year-old, right? I was not a little guy. I cannot imagine being a 12-year-old, because they're still children. My granddaughter is just 10. I cannot imagine in 2 years from now that she'd be homeless, living on the streets. It's amazing to me that these kids are doing this. When you got there, from the time that you landed and got situated in your hotel or where you were staying, how long was it before you were on the streets actually working?
I'll tell you, when I got into the hotel, they were actually doing a rescue in my hotel.
Wow.
They rescued a girl in my hotel. I don't know how I didn't see them walking down the hallway out with her. And this was a girl that this is the third time they've rescued her.
Well, talk about that. What is a rescue? Because it sounds like, from the outside, it sounds like when you're rescuing somebody, like they're being held against their will. But a lot of times they're not, correct? A lot of times they're out there on their own. They don't think they can go home. Is that correct?
Right. Bad situation at home. I'm just speaking in general, not this specific case, but bad situation at home. May not have a proper parent figure at home. Get hooked on drugs, because that's usually what happens when they lure them out of the home. It's usually from a broken home or something where they're not getting the attention, the love, the confidence at home. They promise them the world, lure them out, get them hooked on drugs. And then, these kids think that this is life, but they're getting, the love and attention that they weren't getting at home.
Right.
So they get lured into these situations, and this is why I fully support Change Unchained, because this was another part of the puzzle piece, is the aftercare. If these kids or these victims of human trafficking are not getting the proper aftercare, what happens is they wind up, especially if they're addicted to the drugs that they've been forced to go on, or, if they're not getting the proper aftercare, they're winds up back in it. And here's a prime example of somebody that this is the third time that they've rescued them, because they weren't getting the proper aftercare, and they've gone back to it willingly. So
it's almost like a drug addiction is the way that I've seen it happen, is that you go back home, you get back into the bad situation again, or you go back to sometimes it's even a good situation. It's just not the situation best for you or what you think is best for you. And so you leave. How many times have you seen the story of 3, is that common? I mean, how many times do you see this where these kids return time and time again?
It's common. It is common. You know, a lot of times also, like, you'll see that they are rescued and then charged for the crimes that they were forced to commit. You know, they're not getting the proper advocates. You know, you're just having law enforcement who are not trained properly to deal with a survivor and what they've gone through. And, you know, not, yeah, they may have been willingly committing the crime, but, you know, they've kind of been forced into it. So,
Well, okay, that's a hair we can split and talk about.
it's
I'm
a
a person. I
difficult
believe if I understand if you're being coerced into something, I understand that, right? The
making
problem
them
is
think that, you know,
right. I think that what we've got to look at, and this is the question I had next, is do we have enough laws on the books, or are the existing laws, do they work for this area, or do they need to be revised or looked at? What's your opinion?
there are a lot of laws that have loopholes. You know, we're seeing an increase in coverage on this topic, and it's not that it's just flourishing now. It's always flourished. It's just that it's never been spoken about. It's never been tackled. So there's a lot of laws in certain states that have a lot of loopholes that I'm seeing that they're going back and they're
And what's an
closing
example of a loophole that you would see?
a loophole is basically there. I forgot what state it was in. Recently, there was somebody that was charged for crimes against children, trafficking, whatever it was. And he was, they sentenced him, I believe, to 37 years. His defense team found the loophole in the law, and it wound up he only got 17 years
Wow.
because they found the loophole. You know, those are the types of things that really need to be addressed. I do fully believe that harsher sentencing. Now, I know every state is different. I see some states coming to the table and getting harsher sentencing. Arizona last year tripled this sentencing, no matter what level the crime was. You know, I just saw that Nevada, since the election and the new person in place, I forget their name. They now are closing in on something, a law that even if you lure a child, just lure a child, you're getting an automatic life sentence.
Awesome. That's
So those are
spectacular.
the types of things that I want to see. It
Right.
should be a no-brainer. This is
Right.
bipartisan. It doesn't matter. You know,
Right.
if the line in the sand for me is the children.
Well, you would think it would be a bipartisan issue, but there's a large group of very vocal people who don't want any laws whatsoever. And
Yeah.
sadly, they've got a group of billionaires backing them right now and are able to get prosecutors to release the criminals and lock up the people like yourselves that are trying to look for people. I mean, we just saw a reporter at an event in Ohio arrested because he upset someone. The system is the system right now is upside down. And Mama, the problem that I have is that you can go do the work, but if the work that you're doing is fruitless, meaning that you save the kids, but the system does not have anything in place to ensure that these kids don't return to the streets, then what you did means nothing. Right? It's fruitless. So let me ask you this: what post advocacy do you think needs to be put in place, and what post services for these kids need to be put in place to get them back on the right track?
The aftercare. I mean, the one, obviously we need harsher sentencing for the criminals, but I'm focusing more on the rescuing of the children, making sure that more aftercare is brought to this country. Like, I just saw something in Savannah, Georgia, where they were able to get government funding for an aftercare home for these kids, where they're getting, like, I think it's a 3-year contract or government funding, $250,000 a year, and it's much needed. It's much needed. You know, the organizations that do provide aftercare, you know, those are the ones that we need to support because these kids need this aftercare, whether it's, you know, whatever it is. They have a life of trauma ahead of them. You know, here we have these predators that are getting slaps on the wrist back out on the street reoffending
Right.
again. And then, you know, here we have the victims who this doesn't go away. I've spoken to many
Right.
survivors that, maybe 60 years old right now and it happened when they were 9 and they're still dealing with
Yep.
these
Yep.
problems. You know,
Yep.
the aftercare is a huge part of this, a very huge part.
Give me an example. What do you when you say aftercare? What do you mean? What's an example of that?
Whether it's the therapy, whether it's the rehab, whether it's, depending on how severe it is, medical, um, Change Unchained, what they do, they take them to their appointments. They do a more of a spiritual thing, like a very relaxed kind of setting, and teach them a trade. Anything that's going to help them move forward. You're never going to take the trauma away of
Right.
what they've gone through. However, the healing part of it needs to happen so that they do feel that they have hope going forward and having some sort of life, happy life. Um, it's a long process, and if we're not getting them that aftercare, if they're not getting that aftercare, if we don't have organizations that are providing that, or states that are
Right.
like Savannah, Georgia, that are getting that government funding for it, here we are sending all this money to Ukraine, but yet,
Right.
I'm like, so,
Well, let me.
my tax dollars, I would fully support. I don't care, without tax dollars, I would fully support my tax dollars going to that instead of obviously Ukraine. You know, um,
Well, the biggest issue for the groups that do what you're doing is cash. They need money.
They need money.
funding, right? So funding either from governmental agencies, NGOs, et cetera, or from private citizens. Is there a process for people to be able to donate and give to these organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I always recommend. I fully support Change Our Chains, obviously. And I want to tell you what's coming down the line, but I always recommend don't go by my word. Do your research. Go
Right.
look. Everything is available from a 501c3. You can get all of their finances or everything. Everything. Make sure you're comfortable where you're sending your money. You know, like I said, Change on Change hit two things with me. They do the search and rescue. They are willing to share the information and get people involved, and they do the aftercare. So,
Right.
they're a year old. They're building it's a husband and wife that sold all of their things, bought this plot of land, and they wanted to do this because it actually happened in their own home to their own son. So not only was he involved as a Navy chief, he's now retired and doing this for how many years? It also happened to their own child that he was coming home every night and they didn't even know it. And that's how, scary this is because it could happen to anybody.
Right.
Social media, the luring, it's everywhere and it can happen to anybody. And you sometimes might not even know it. Your child might not go missing. Your child might be coming home every night and not telling you what's going on. And then you find out that all this time they were being trafficked.
Well, when you found one of these kids, you located these kids.
Okay.
What was their response to getting food and fresh clothes and a bath and shower or whatever?
Well,
What was their response?
I didn't physically find a child. The homeless
Right,
child
I
in
understand
the
that, right.
article. In my heart, I really feel it is that child. However, you reach a situation where on the card he's 17, he has no ID. He's saying a different name. He said he was 18. He may have come from a situation where something was abusive at home. I don't know.
Right.
But they can't do anything to force somebody to come with them until they get the accurate information that he's wanting to go. So I've
Right.
been checking in on that. Haven't heard any updates since then, but they do have the location. They have all the information that I gave them. However, all of the information that I gave on the Cosmopolitan, that my team gave in and
Right.
gathered, I did check in and they did set up what's called static surveillance in different parts of the day with the times that I told them, the location that I told them for 2 days. And what I can say is I did get confirmation that because of that, they were able to rescue a child from the information that we turned in. So, that's people think that the volunteers and the canvassing are not important or important and as important. It is
Right.
just as important because without that information, they would have never gone to that location.
Exactly.
They would have never found that child. So everything works hand in hand and it's a group effort to get it done. And the fact that they found 15 children in such a I mean, the first day alone they found 12. And they're still working cases. Even though the big search left Vegas,
Right.
Free International is still there, who they partnered with. Nevada Child Seekers is still there. Nevada Child Seekers has an Instagram page. You can follow up. They're constantly posting updates. They're constantly posting flyers. And a lot of people have asked, how can I do this in my own town? The simple way of saying it for now is contact your local county sheriff, contact your local missing child's department, find out if they have volunteer programs, or what you could do is go onto the website that has current up-to-date missing child flyers, print them out yourself, go out safely into your community and start asking questions. There's a number or tip line. Call in the intel that you get. If you really, you don't need recognition. You don't have to blast this. You could just do it.
Right.
But
yeah, that's what I tell people a lot of times, Mama. What I tell people all the time is, you don't need followers to be a leader. You just lead. You go do what you're going to do, and you will get followers. If what you're doing has meaning and merit, you'll get people behind you that will support you. So with that being the case, you've been doing this for a few years now. How rewarding is this after this first big event for you to see that the efforts that you've put in for the last few years have led, and so people say, well, it was only 15 children, right? Which I sadly, that's the way that some people look at it. But the effort that you put in, were the 15 so far that have been saved worth it?
Absolutely. It was worth every second. It was worth everything. Even if it was just one child,
Right.
it would have been all worth it, because that's just one child that is safe again. Yeah, there's 15 and probably more to come as they continue working these cases. It's all worth it. It was life-changing for me because, just when I think like, oh gosh, I'm finally getting to do, the boots on the ground after not being, and now I left there saying, what else can I do? I want to do more. I want to rescue another, or be a part of an operation that rescues another 50 kids, another 60
Right.
kids.
And I think the things that people don't understand is that the job that you played, the role that you played in the rescue of these kids is no different than the dispatcher who gets the helicopter out to sea to save the boat that's sinking, right? You need the dispatcher. You need the boots on the ground. You can't always be the superhero wearing the cape. There's got to be some grunt work done to get this to happen. And
dirty.
Right. And a lot of times the people who actually walk in and bust the door down, that's the image that Hollywood or TV has put in our head of how it happens. And it's really not that way. It's really more of asking people to give you information and then confronting the person and saying, hey, listen, are you okay? Do you want to go? Do you want resources? There's people who love and care about you that want you back, or at least to know that you're safe. When you talk to a child like that, and maybe you didn't do it specifically, but when your team does, is what's the response of that child? Generally, especially those that say, I'm done, I want to come home. Is there a lot of that where they realize, where the child says, this is too harsh out here, I want to go back to
Yeah,
a safe
it comes
place?
to a point where, they think that they're safe on the streets because of a situation they may have had at home. And they finally get to a point of, I need help. I want to come.
Right.
I want to go with you. Please help me. Because, that they still stand, a missing child, even if they're homeless on the street and not caught up in the trafficking, they still stand the chance of getting swept up by somebody that wants to traffic them and
Right.
promise them the world. So, it's dangerous. So yeah, there are instances where, from what I had asked and I had learned, was that after maybe 4 or 5 times of them, speaking to the child and everything, they finally say, I need help. And, they offer the resources. They work with families if depending on the situation, every case is different. So
Right.
they work around the situation.
What is the, well, I should say the opinion. What are the facts surrounding how violent the homeless encampments are? This is what I hear continually, is that it's extremely violent. There's a lot of rape. There's a lot of sexual assault, a lot of assault. So talk about that, just how dangerous it is, in particular for a child that's if you're 16, 17 years old, you're probably big enough to take care of yourself if you're a male. But But if you're a 12-year-old, talk about how violent and how bad it is.
What I can confirm, and I know that there was a lot of people in my comments about Vegas, make sure you go to the tunnels, the tunnels, the tunnels.
Yeah.
Um, I can, you only hear about certain things, um, but I can confirm when I was in the task force house, they did bring up the tunnels. Um, and it is very violent. It is to the point where this group, like, they don't even go in there. I'm not sure that the
Right.
local law, but that's how dangerous it is that
Right.
they can't even go there. Like, that's how bad it is. I don't have details exactly what's going on, but I can only imagine, and from what I've heard, it's not pretty. Like, imagine that they won't even go in there. That
Well,
they
yeah, armed men. There are places right now in this country that the police won't go because it's not worth their life to risk it for nothing. I mean, just to walk in and take a look around is too dangerous, and I think that's astonishing in this country at this point. So you finished this one up. There's another one coming up, and then I think you said you have some big news. Let's talk about that. So what's next for you? Where do you head next?
the next big search, which is organized by Call to Rescue, who's based out of Pensacola, Florida. Um, they are going to be hitting Pensacola. They just had one in November 14th to the 18th. They did rescue 7. Obviously, Vegas is the largest as far as cases, but each state they pass off their top cases to them, and the organizations will that group together will take over them and do what they
And this
can.
next one that you're doing, is it tied to a sporting event or anything like that, or is it just going out?
No, this is just, I believe, because they have an uptick of cases or whatever. I don't know. I am not
Okay.
sure. I don't have all the details yet. I'm still waiting on the dates, and once I get them, I will be joining the Pensacola one. There will be one in Chicago. There will be one in Detroit. There will be one in Orlando. And as they plan the dates, I'll get them and see if I could go to them. But
What about others? Are these other dates? Is it possible to get more volunteers locally?
Yes.
Does it make sense to start? So these, when you go to these events, are they all under the same group, or are they different groups that you're working with?
So what will happen is Call to Rescue organizes it. Change Unchained is partnered with them. And then what they will do is, depending on the state, they will get in contact and work in tandem with the local law enforcement, the local NGOs, whoever that may be, local anti-human trafficking, and they all work together on the
Okay.
cases for those dates.
Okay.
The volunteer program will be announced, and as I get the information and the website is up to volunteer, I will post it. Obviously, I will speak about it, and whoever wants to volunteer that is local or even wants to fly in like I do is more than welcome to. They welcome volunteers. The more the better, because that's more intel, that's more boots on the ground, that's more, you know, groundwork being covered.
Right. And when you get in, is there any training that starts? Anything that they teach you before you go out? Is there a orientation?
Yes, there is an orientation video that they either do physically at the location, but for Vegas, they actually emailed us the 10-minute video. We watched it. She went over everything before the first shift. Yeah, they're very good with all of that. You have to sign in, give self up. They also, check in with you the first day. They were texting me. We were supposed to be back by a certain time, but I was so cutthroat. I said, "No, we're going to that hotel." And she's texting me from the main center. "Are you guys okay? I don't want to put you guys on flyers too. Like, we don't want you."
Exactly.
And I'm like, "No. I lost track of time." I said, "I have something important that I'm following. I'm trying to get more information on for you guys." She's like, "Okay." She's like, "Just let me know you're." I'm like, "We're fine. We're fine." But yeah, I mean, everybody can get involved. Everybody
Okay.
can get involved.
So what's your big news? You said you got something big breaking. What is that? Let's talk. Let's get into that.
So it is not officially announced, but it was announced by the founder on my podcast. So I am going to just pass on what was said publicly so far. So basically, Call to Rescue, a lot of people are like, how can I get involved in my own state? Well, guess what? Now you can, depending on how much work you're willing to put in. So Call to Rescue, who's based out of Pensacola, Florida, and they do a lot of training and stuff there. They have a lot of their meetings. They are creating something with other organizations, Free International, Change Unchained, Call to Rescue, Anonymity Rescue, Say Something Assembly, and a couple of others as well, are all coming together as one under a new group. And what they're doing is they are opening a training facility where in Pensacola that you would have to fly to, go to, where their big goal is basically where you go there, you get trained, you get certified, and basically it's the big search. They train you how to do that, how
Oh,
they did
wow.
it, and you take that back to your state and you run your own big search. So that's what I'll be doing for my state. I'm gonna go get
That
trained.
is phenomenal.
I'm gonna get certified. I'm gonna create my own group, and we are going to do exactly and what was done in Vegas.
Now, what's the vetting process for this?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So I would assume that they're going to make sure that you're not a trafficker or a pedophile or a harm to children or otherwise. So
Yeah, obviously, I'm sure there's going to be deep vetting. I'm sure they're going to do all of that, obviously, because.
and you'll clear it, right? You'll clear the vetting.
Me? Oh God, yeah. Listen, yes. Yes. But what's so great about them is that they are willing to share their knowledge. They're willing to pass it on because in their minds, the more people that join this movement, the more children will be saved.
Right.
So right now, yes, they are traveling. They're having to take time out to travel to other states to do all the work. Now, if they have this in all 50 states where people are willing to step up and actually do the work, it's more people rescuing kids. It's more kids being rescued. Obviously, this is not like, cases. This isn't where we're kicking in doors or anything. But you bring it back. You work with your local law enforcement, and you do it in your own state.
Well, I think it's interesting that the number is around 800,000 kids a year disappear. Now, 400,000 of them come back home.
Right.
And a lot of times people go, well, 400,000 come back home, like the other 400,000 don't.
They don't matter?
That's what I'm saying. 400,000.
Even if 700,000 came home, what about the other 100,000?
What if all of them except one came home?
Right.
And again, that's what I go back to is that remember during COVID, people could put all of these measures into place. They could put all these resources into place to save just one life. And then we've got people who are saying, listen, we can save 400,000 kids a year. Well, it's not worth it. Do you feel that that's the way does it feel like that to you?
I have been so frustrated with all of this. I have been frustrated with, what has gone on Facebook. What has, like you said, you can put all these measures in place and use all of these resources to do what you do as far as COVID people, vaccine people, all of this stuff. But you cannot get rid of the 96% of the trafficking that went on through Facebook, the groups that they were selling children, trafficking children, all of that. You couldn't do that, but you couldn't take down any of that content, but you could take down the content of mine that you didn't agree with about what I've posted. Like it within seconds. It's very frustrating. And, I truly feel that a lot of people in this country that are in power, I'm not saying that all of them are participants, let's say, but more of like you turn to look the other way kind of thing.
Listen, I'll be real blunt about it. There's a problem. We know what the problem is. We have solutions to solve it. And if you're not actively working to solve it, I've got to assume you're part of it. Sorry.
This is why I don't support any side. I don't support. They're all involved.
Yep.
They're all involved.
And you and I have talked about this offline. I should say off the record, but it's the thing that you and I look at. We are very partisan people about certain things in politics. That we believe very, very strongly about certain issues because of our convictions, who we are as people. But the one thing that we should be able to agree on both sides of the aisle is that harm to children is unacceptable regardless of who did it, regardless of who's responsible for it. I don't care if it was Trump. I don't care if it was Bush. I don't care if it was my son. They've got to be held accountable for what they've done. Now, my son didn't do anything, and I don't think Bush did anything. I don't think Trump did anything. But again, if that's the case, then they've got to fucking burn.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Absolutely. And I've said it publicly. A lot of people, because I have, Patriot in my screen name, it's just so everybody could find me. If I could drop, I can drop it, but, it just, because they hide
That's
me
right,
so
because
much,
people
I
want
do
to
it.
assign. They want to assign that you're a patriot. That you're
Listen.
crazy if you're a patriot, right? That's crazy. You're a threat to the nation if you're a patriot. And the only thing that you're doing, again, we've talked off, and I'm not going to go into politics here because it doesn't matter.
No,
but
it doesn't.
we've talked about politics before, and there are things that you and I align on, and there's things that we don't align on, and I'm fine with that.
Right.
But the one thing that I hold sacred is kids, and this mentality of our leadership to say, well, we're not going to show you the names of these people because it might embarrass them. It should. You hang around a known pedophile, it should scare the shit out of you. It should embarrass you that you didn't see the signs for yourself. Sorry. And so, yeah, you have no protection from being embarrassed. You put yourself into that situation. The children didn't. So let's talk about, this issue right here, I think, is what people shy away from a lot. And this is the area that you're going head on into, is that the individual molestation of a child by a family member or so on, that's terrible. And we've got to stop that as well. But the groups that you're fighting against are the ones who've taken it to the next level. It's not they're molesting, they're making that child available to be molested. Do you think that our politicians currently, they understand the issue and, number one, are willing to do what it takes to solve the issue by and we've talked about it here previous, but is substantially harsher sentencing, life sentencing for these sick fucks that they may not be the one molesting the child, but they put the child into the position of being molested?
Had you asked me this maybe a year or two ago, I would have, from what I was seeing, no, they wouldn't have stepped up. But I am seeing a bigger shift. Not as big as I would like, but I'll accept any shift at this point to do what needs to be done. I am seeing a shift. Am I gonna just sit back and just wait? No. Am I pushing? Am I still contacting politicians? Yeah. I have politicians in numerous states that I am in that now text me and ask for my advice. One of them just moved from Illinois to Arkansas and is, asking me for references of advocacy groups or 501c3s, NGOs that they can get involved in. And that's I'm sitting on a podcast and I have a politician texting me, "Hey, is this organization any good? What do you recommend?" Like, they're coming to me, but these are the types of people that I'm working with. It's bipartisan. I'm working with both sides.
Yep.
And who's one who has successfully passed unanimous bills in Illinois for harsher sentencing against traffickers and stuff. He's not in office anymore, but he's continuing his path with, advocating for against child trafficking. He's working with us, so these are the types of people that I'm trying to align with to have people in each state that we can work with to get it done. I'm only one person. I'll put the information out there. I'll do everything that I can with the connections that I have, but I want to, I'm not the end all for this. Everybody, if you want to step up, start contacting your state reps and see what they're doing.
Exactly. Be the leader that you're.
To post about it, because I can't be all over one time.
Well, that's what a buddy of mine, the advice a buddy of mine gave me years ago. A mentor of mine. He gave me 2 or 3 pieces of advice that I think that are, well, they've stuck with me my entire life. When people think that they're just one person and they can't accomplish something, he goes, look at all of the areas of history to where they've done exactly that. One person can change the world. And he goes, positively and negatively. Jonas Salk is a great example. Changed the world, right? So did the guy who shot the Archduke Ferdinand and started World War I. One person can change the planet. So what you're doing when you say, well, I'm just one person, or they're calling me, and there's a reason for that. I know that sometimes it seems like, wow, they're reaching out to me. And some people, when you say that, will say, well, you're trying to make yourself look important. No,
No.
Mama, you are important. There's a reason that people call out to those resources, right? If I want to know something specific, I don't call the people who don't know. I don't go to my friends. I go to the experts and say, hey, listen, what do you know about this? So I first of all, I think congratulations are in order for what you've done so far as one person. And again, putting boots on the ground. What you've done is you've gone from, I want to help, to please help me help others. You've gotten a number of donations together and being able to go help assist 15 kids. You've got some detractors on social media that are trying to insert themselves into this as they're somehow virtuous. And I would say, for lack of a better term, fuck them. They're not doing dick. They're not out on the ground. They're not raising money. They're not working to help these kids. And I know you don't want to get into that dirt, so I'll do it for you. But I think that it's sick that fellow patriots, fellow conservatives would step up and have a problem with the work that you're doing. All I would say is congratulations and good luck on what you're doing next. I cannot wait to see what happens next.
A lot more.
I'm so excited. So excited. Well, Mama, thanks so much for joining us today. That'll wrap it up. Do you have anything in closing? Let me ask you this. Where can people find you? If they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
I have Twitter. I forgot my hands. I think it's 2A Patriot 74. I have Instagram, which I just use for posting. I'm not very good at responding. TikTok is my main, the 2A Patriot Mama. That's where I try to put as much information as possible. We have the podcast Mondays and Wednesdays, although we're going live tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is Dark to Light 11:11. If you search for it, it's got an angel logo. And
if somebody knows of a child, or if they know the location of a child, and let's say that they're in California or they're in Nevada or they're in Indiana, and they want to get that information to you, how would they do that through those channels, or is there another path to take that's more effective?
If there is something in your own state that you see for a missing child, absolutely contact the tip line. Absolutely, if there's contact your local, whatever is attached to that missing child flyer. Yes, absolutely contact law enforcement.
Well, I appreciate it so much. Again, congratulations. So proud of the work that you're doing. It's so exciting to see what happens next. Thank you, everybody. This is the CramerSez podcast. It is Thursday, February 23rd. My name is Kramer. We will be back as soon as we can. It may be even tomorrow. We'll see you then.
More at CramerSez.com. CramerSez.com.